Jacob is a seasoned financial executive, entrepreneur, and corporate strategist.
I was raised in a family business that was a commercial fishing business.
You have some entrepreneurship blood in your veins.
Young guy looking to finance the purchase of a new
Well, welcome back, everybody, with Jacob Safarik, BC Greens, and Optimi. We'll get into that in a moment, but I wanted to let you know that on Reporting Norms, we are on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. So if you watch this content and you like it, please like and subscribe. All right, well, let me go ahead and introduce my guest today. Jacob is a seasoned financial executive, entrepreneur, and corporate strategist with 2 decades of experience in international project finance, business development, and regulatory compliance. Currently serving as the CFO and director of Optimi Health, he plays a pivotal role in shaping the company's financial and operational strategy. Optimi Health, a leader in GMP-certified psychedelic substance manufacturing, benefits from his expertise in corporate finance, strategic growth, and regulatory oversight. Optimi Health is a listed company on the Canadian Stock Exchange. He's also co-founder and CFO of BC Greens Pharmaceutical Inc. Jacob has been instrumental in advancing the company's position in the pharmaceutical and health industries. His entrepreneurial acumen was further demonstrated through his tenure as president of JS Consulting, where he provided corporate finance and advisory services to businesses across various sectors. Before his ventures into entrepreneurship, Jacob held key leadership roles at the Siegfried Group, where he led market expansion efforts in San Francisco and San Jose, fostering strong client relationships and mentoring financial professionals. His experience also includes working as a senior accountant at Smythe LLP and an assurance manager at PKF in Vienna, where he conducted financial audits for the European Union. Jacob holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree from McGill University with a focus on accounting and finance. He is a chartered professional accountant, recognized for his strategic leadership, financial expertise, and commitment to business excellence. His career continues to be defined by innovation, integrity, and a passion for driving impactful financial solutions. Welcome to the show, Jacob. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Norman. Thanks for that action-packed introduction there. I appreciate it, and it's a pleasure to be on.
Excellent. You're a busy guy. You're CFO of 2 companies, and then something in the intro where I talked about GMP-certified psychedelic substance manufacturing. GMP stands for Good Manufacturing Practices. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So with that introduction, tell us a little bit about your journey from accountancy to, this cannabis and psychedelic, industry. How did you make that transition? Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it has a lot to do with my upbringing. I was raised in a family business that was a commercial fishing business. So I refer to it as an integrated seafood business in the sense that we had a fishing fleet off the west coast of BC, and we had canning operations in British Columbia, fresh frozen packing facilities, and canning facilities in Asia as well. And we distributed globally in that business. But I grew up working in all aspects of the business, from the, working on fishing boats, working in the repair barge and maintenance, working in canning facility, and working in quality assurance. And so there's a bit of a blue collar upbringing in the sense that, just like any, young guy looking to finance the purchase of a new, Nintendo system or something, you got to get a job at some point, right? And we were fortunate to have the opportunity to work, my brother and I, in various roles in the family business growing up. And actually, my mom's side of the family had a family business as well. So it's entrepreneurship definitely runs in the family, and there's always a push to go outside the family business and get some experience. And when I was at McGill, the financial crisis hit, and I had to choose my major at the time, and I was looking at accounting, I was looking at economics, I was looking at finance, and the different career tracks, and some of the mentors in my life, including Bill McFetridge, a gentleman that sits on our advisory board for BC Green and is our lead counsel, external counsel for both businesses. He is a CPA before he was a lawyer, and he would have influenced my decision a little bit to go into accounting during that time, right during the financial crisis. And I'm really glad that I did. I can't say, I was an A student in my first, accounting 101 course, but I picked it up. I always enjoyed math, and once I got a handle around the framework, it just became quite fluid for me. And I was fortunate to get a job with Smythe, where during the summers, after finishing a winter semester at McGill, I had a summer internship, and that's where I got my experience working in audits. And the one thing that I think the CPA profession does really well is it provides a framework for solving problems. And it's, there's a lot of regulations to read up on as well. And, so I've kind of pulled from this training that I got most recently while doing my CPA and working, for a public accounting firm for a number of years, and then in professional resources with Siegfried, where we connected, drawing from this experience of how do you break down a problem and analyze different alternatives to solving it and provide the best outcome to move forward, and then combining that with a bit of a blue collar upbringing and I guess a passion and a drive to work hard and create things.
Wow. You got your hands dirty there.
Yeah.
As well as learning how to audit. So great combination. So then you have some entrepreneurship blood in your veins, and you've had some mentorship. How did you make the leap into this particular industry, cannabis and psychedelics?
Yeah, so, we were watching the regulations. My brother and I specifically were watching the regulations for cannabis evolve. There was a medical framework in place that Trudeau announced was going to be transition into a new act called the Cannabis Act in Canada. And that was happening in 2018. And, we were looking at, even prior to that, this gray market start to really take shape in Canada, and it was really interesting to see it all unfold, in the sense that there was no legal framework for accessing cannabis, but there were brick and mortar stores all over our hometown of Vancouver and across the country. And we were seeing this happening, in the U.S. as well. And so we started researching, there's these stores all over the place, and the police aren't shutting them down. And how are they operating legally? And where's the supply coming from? And what are the regulations? And of course, the accountant in the family, I started reviewing the regulations, and we continued to discuss, potential opportunities. And there's a lot of history as to how this gray market developed that I won't get into today. But, we decided once Trudeau announced that cannabis would be legalized for recreational purposes, we decided that we were going to begin, looking for opportunities to start a business. And, we got buy-in from our father, who's actually our current CEO. So it's very much a family business. It's my brother and I that oversee the day-to-day operations, and he advises, on the board, and is integral in every material decision that we make. But obviously, when we were looking at the business, my dad also comes from a legal background before he was running this, our family fishing business, Oceans. We wanted to do things the right way, and we're very passionate about the medical opportunities. And we we knew that that was going to be an area of the market that we really wanted to focus on, because we could see that the relief cannabis was bringing to a number of people, and has, and had done so for a number of years, whether it be people, like cancer patients suffering from nausea from all the radiation and chemotherapy, whether it be, people with insomnia having trouble sleeping, or people with chronic pain, and other more conventional medicine just not being as effective as cannabis for relief. And that's when we learned about good manufacturing practices, which is the global standard for pharmaceutical drug manufacturing. And that's where I started researching, okay, how do you build a facility that's compliant with GMP? How do you build standard operating procedures to actually formulate drugs? And and what is required? What type of investment is required to do this? And thankfully, I had a bit of a background in quality assurance for the fishing business. GMP takes things a step further, and in the sense that, you have to prove consistency from the very beginning of a process and control, and it's all there to ensure the safety and efficacy of the end product for the patient. And it's generally a much higher standard than the Food and Drugs Act.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
it's more stringent. Okay.
Then the concept of food grade and nutraceutical regulations. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. So the company your father's a CEO of, you were really describing BC Greens
Yes.
Pharmaceuticals, right?
Yeah.
And so in reality, you're actually CFO of two companies, not only BC Greens Pharmaceuticals, but Optimi Health as well. Isn't that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So in 2016, we founded BC Green, and we developed our business plan and started the development process of building purpose-built facility for the cultivation manufacturing of pharmaceutical grade cannabis. And we completed that facility and licensed it federally in Canada in July of 2020. And around that time, COVID had hit the world, and we had some friends that were sitting at home, and we're seeing some opportunity. We're looking at some opportunities in the psychedelic industry, which was starting to follow the cannabis movement that had taken place in between 2016 to 2020. And we had gone through a very stringent process of understanding what's GMP, how do you construct economically a GMP compliant facility. And by 2021, we were distributing our products, and early 2022, we were exporting our products in the cannabis facility internationally, and gaining a lot of real-time experience and developing an expertise in establishing businesses that comply with this high standard of medical drug development. And that's when we were approached by friends of ours. I would say it was late 2020, early 2021, when we really got Optimi going, and we agreed to support the development of two additional facilities, also purpose-built, and they're actually located adjacent to our cannabis facility in Princeton, British Columbia. And we started the process of raising capital and building and purpose-built facilities for growing mushrooms, extracting the psilocybin from mushrooms, and formulating and creating drug products that are, that would be safe for consumption for patients in clinical trial settings, or through special access programs. So we currently distribute our psilocybin to Australia, and we also manufacture MDMA. Those are the two products of focus for Optimi right now. And our MDMA drug product has been distributed in the Australian market for almost 6 months now. And we're seeing really promising results. So it's exciting.
Interesting. So psilocybin, mushrooms, fungi, therefore Optimi.
Exactly. Yes.
There. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Got it. So MDMA, on the street, it's usually called ecstasy, and it's kind of recreational, but MDMA at the pharmaceutical quality level with GMP practice manufacturing, MDMA is actually used to help patients with PTSD. Is that correct?
Exactly, yeah. And obviously, the manufacturing of MDMA in a GMP environment ensures that it's free of any, it ensures that it's free of any heavy metals, microbial contaminants. It's not cut with any other substances as you would find with ecstasy or MDMA purchased off the street. And that's the big distinction between the two is truly, if you're accessing it outside of a controlled environment, controlled GMP facility, you actually aren't really sure if you're taking MDMA or ecstasy, and so there is a distinction between the two for sure.
Yeah. I think that's important for our listeners and viewers to understand that we're talking about pharmaceutical grade MDMA used for patients with PTSD and other psychotherapies that are needed, but they're usually only provided under very supervised conditions. Isn't that right?
Exactly. So it's all patient-assisted therapy thus far that our products have been distributed to. So Australia has a program called the Authorized Prescriber Scheme, and every export we make is attached to a psychiatrist's prescription, and there will be 3 sessions generally where the patient will be dosed with MDMA and undergo psychiatrist-assisted therapy. And this has been a practice that MAPS, a large nonprofit organization that's based in the U.S., has been working on getting a phase 3 drug approval in the U.S. with. And so rather than more conventional medicine, they found that MDMA is treated much more effectively in a patient-assisted therapy environment.
Okay, so in the U.S., MDMA is close to federal approval, or is actually in testing mode currently.
It is, yeah. So last year, the FDA actually did not approve MAPS MDMA assisted therapy at the conclusion of their phase 3 trials, but they're making improvements on the protocols and reports, and we anticipate that there could be, whether it be MAPS or other organizations, pushing through the conventional clinical trial method, MDMA-assisted therapy drug approval in the near future. But also what we're seeing is patients access MDMA through what we call authorized prescriber schemes or special access programs. So to provide access to medicine, unapproved medicine, most nations around the world have some sort of program where if a physician is supportive, a patient can actually get access to unapproved drugs. And this is how Australia has been distributing cannabis for a number of years through their authorized prescriber program, where physicians will register to become an authorized prescriber of an unapproved drug. And it's actually resulted in the growth of a really significant market for cannabis. And they actually rescheduled psilocybin and MDMA to the same schedule as cannabis, and they're making it available through a similar authorized prescriber scheme. So this is the first major market that's beginning to open up, and there is an opportunity through having our drugs now in market in Australia and being dispensed to patients through patient-assisted therapy. There's an opportunity to start collecting real-world evidence of the efficacy of these drugs and potentially pursue an expedited pathway to drug approval that would be accepted globally. So Optimi's initiatives right now are to continue to manufacture and supply the authorized prescriber scheme in Australia, while also support clinical trials globally to continue to support the movement and hopefully the eventual approval of a drug to provide relief for, as you mentioned, for MDMA, it's PTSD, severe PTSD, and for our psilocybin formulation, it's primarily targeting treatment-resistant depression. But there are a number of other use cases that are being explored through our partnerships that we have, which various companies that we're involved with are conducting clinical trials to support, whether it be addiction, using psychedelic medicine to treat addiction, or substance abuse, or to provide relief to palliative care patients. And so we're hoping that we're going to see a number of use cases, be supported through these trials over the years, and most importantly, provide relief to people that conventional where they failed to find through conventional medicine.
Yeah, it hasn't been as effective with other treatments. Now, Australia seems very advanced in use and controlled distribution of cannabis, MDMA, and psilocybin. Are there any other countries in the world that are as progressive as Australia, or are testing these things for potential approval in their respective countries?
Yes, I mean, Canada has a small population of patients accessing both substances through their special access program. It's a small population in the sense that physicians, they do take liability in Canada to prescribe drugs that are unapproved to patients through a special access program. So that's inhibited growth a bit. But right now, currently, it's just Australia. But we're seeing a number of movements throughout North America to provide access through clinical trials more broadly, and we're pursuing some initiatives in that respect. Large scale clinical trials where patients can participate to get access in the near term, where otherwise they wouldn't be able to.
Okay, gotcha. Now this podcast is called Reporting Norms, so I've got to tie it into some financial reporting.
Of course.
Optimi, as I said, as we talked about earlier, Optimi is listed on the CSE and is actually is also on the OTC QX, was it?
Okay,
Exchange.
yeah.
So you have to go through financial reporting requirements, audits, etc. Maybe just touch a little bit about some of the compliance that you do with Optimi.
Yeah. So we comply with international financial reporting standards, both companies, and produce audited financials annually and quarterly financials in a very similar manner for BC Green, despite not being a public company. It's a private company, but for our investors and stakeholders, we produce quarterly financials as well. And it's I would say the most interesting thing that we've learned through going through the process of developing our cost accounting and internal controls is really the treatment of inventory. And we have to in line with the fair value accounting practices, we have to value our inventory at fair value. And so when we look at our various crops that we have, ongoing throughout the facility, we're either at BC Green, we could have 24,000 plants, actually probably more like 30,000 plants growing at any given time. And Optimi, we could be growing, hundreds of batches at once. And at year end and quarter end, you have to calculate the fair value of those, what we call biological assets. And so that's a very interesting challenge. And this metric makes sense for more traditional agricultural, farming practices where, whether you're farming, cattle or corn, what the market price is going to be. You have a pretty well-established market, but in these markets, it's a bit more challenging when we're harvesting cannabis. That the bulk dried cannabis could be used as input material for various different products, whether it be extracts or pre-rolls or dried, just selling it as dried flower in different size formats. We have to think about what's the market price that we're going to be getting for that product, and that won't just vary based on the type of product we're producing with the biomass, but it will vary depending on the market that we're exporting to. And being a high growth company, we're accessing new markets all the time. You have to look back and pay close attention to the variables. You have to look ahead at your pro formas and think about, the markets that you're focusing on for all the plants that are currently in growth at year end. And it brings an interesting challenge, because you've seen a lot of public cannabis companies, for instance, have big write-ups or write-downs of their inventory when they actually sell the product, because you have to do an adjustment to the fair value once you sell the product. And as a result, you have to normalize your financials for performance reporting, whether it be for investors and come up with an adjusted EBITDA metric, or for lenders or investors looking to participate in the business, and because it's really challenging at times to estimate, and also you can spend a lot of capital internally developing your systems to come up with accurate fair value calculations, when we're seeing that auditors are less focused on this calculation because stakeholders are normalizing for it right away. So that's been an interesting challenge. And at Optimi, when we're growing mushrooms, we're not selling the bulk biomass as frequently as the psilocybin extract. So what we have to do, we're growing over, we have a genetic bank of mushrooms of over 100 species, and they all have different composition of psilocybin in the biomass, whether it be 1 to 3%, and we have to look at the throughput of extract that we can produce from that mushroom biomass, and fair value based on that throughput. So we spend a lot of time talking about inventory, and it's super important. Also internally, just to have our costs really ironed out so that we're pricing things properly in dynamic markets.
Interesting. Inventory, kind of where you cut your teeth, I think, with the Siegfried Group. A lot of software companies where the inventory is really not that much of an issue. Now you're talking about inventory valuation on biological products. So I can imagine the to kind of grasp the fair value is pretty challenging. So, but let's talk a little bit about Optimi. You have some pretty strong backing with some pretty well-known investors. Can you just tell us a little bit about some of the investors and people that helped you found the company back in 2021? Was it?
Yeah. So Dane Stevens, JJ Wilson, Brian Safarik, my brother, and myself co-founded the company, and I've known Dane and JJ since the early years of high school. So we go back a number of years, and JJ's family is known for founding Lululemon, and if you're from Vancouver, you'd be very familiar with the brand West Beach, which was a snowboard and surf apparel business prior to Lululemon that was also really popular. And so very well-known family, and they're invested in many different industries, and a lot of health in the health and wellness space. And Chip has his nonprofits where he's focused in a lot of research and clinical research. And so, there's a lot of alignment when we came together to start talking about, how we could create a business that could participate and help push this movement forward of psychedelics as an alternative to treating mental illness. And we had just gone through the process of developing a business with BC Green and very similar regulatory kind of format. And, the toughest thing that you don't really think about is really constructing the construction process, where you want to be on budget and you want to be on time. And we had a lot of learnings through building our cannabis facility. So it seemed like a natural fit. We could bring some of the regulatory and development expertise, and definitely the drive and motivation between Dane Stevens, who also grew up in an entrepreneurial environment, also had a family involved in the fishing business, but had both been touched by psychedelics in different ways and had benefited positively from their own experiences. And, back to your question about the significance of having backing from families like the Wilson family. I mean, he looks at businesses from, a global outlook, and he's, very interested in participating in businesses at a global level. And this is certainly a business that could be producing products for export globally as markets start to evolve and take shape, and as the safety and efficacy of drugs continues to, from clinical trials continues to be supported. We see this could be transformative. It's a new space though, and it's very capital intensive. So you need, a strong investor base, and Chip's being extremely, supportive, as well as JJ himself and Dane Stevens. And Dane actually operates a pretty successful jewelry business, and he comes from these third generation in terms of sourcing gemstones globally, and he has a retail store that's pretty well known, and he's done well for himself and has put up a lot of capital for the business. And there's a lot of research that's investments that we're making in addition to the development. So you definitely need a strong investor base, and you need people that are motivated and driven to especially when you're, a pioneer like Optimi in this industry. So we're incredibly fortunate in that respect to have that support.
Yeah, I could imagine that's really helpful. But you've also raised some private placements from external investors as well, right? So it's not just self-funding.
We have a very diversified investor base, and we're continuing to grow and look at opportunities to list on exchanges that will provide access to more institutional investment as well. So we have some, initial kind of due diligence initiatives there where we're looking at potentially uplisting. Certainly there's a lot of family offices globally that are looking at opportunities in cannabis and transformative medicine, and so we've had some investment from various family offices as well.
Okay, interesting. Before I get into the last question, because we're getting close to the end of our time, I just want to remind our listeners that if you really enjoyed this content from Jacob today, please do like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify as well as Apple. So Jacob, we've talked a lot about these alternative medications, cannabis, MDMA, psilocybin. The world is changing from a regulatory standpoint as well. So, especially in the current world, what are you looking forward to in terms of the next 1, 2, 3 years with regards to, kind of where the industry is headed? Can you just comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the collection of real world evidence on the experiences patients are having with approved drugs such as Optimize that are grown in a extracted, formulated in a controlled environment that have to comply with really strict quality control practices, versus the evidence that is being collected with, gray market products. So I think that's harder to substantiate. And I think we're seeing a lot of positive results initially just about the safety alone, provided that the supply is coming from a controlled environment. And we're learning a lot about dosage and how different dosage levels can drive different effects and treatment programs. You hear macro doses for mushrooms and micro doses, and it can be really transformative if somebody's being treated at a macro dose level and have a completely different outcome from a microdose, which is generally a measure of not having a feeling that you're a psychoactive feeling or experience when you're ingesting the drugs, and then different dosage formats, whether it be ingesting through capsule or different beverages or injections. There's a lot of research ongoing and what's the safest and most controlled approach, because obviously when you're consuming through your system, it's your body, depending on what you've eaten or what you've consumed that day, the dosage could have a different effect. So it's all going to be really driven by the clinical trials that we have ongoing with various substances, that dosage forms that have our input products in it.
Okay. Real world evidence coupled with maybe some political regulatory changes that may be happening in the U.S. and perhaps other parts of the world as well.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing more support globally for governments wanting to get first and foremost supporting veterans, and we've seen our RFK and even Trump discuss, and start to establish budgets for various research initiatives for how psychoactives or psychedelics could treat veterans, that are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's an exciting time in the sense that, there's obviously people that are suffering, looking for relief, and a demand for alternative treatments where conventional medicine has missed the mark. Exactly.
No, I hear you. Wow, sounds like you're really on a path to provide a lot of the alternative medicines and provide relief to a large number of populations of people who are affected. So I wish you the best of luck in the business. Any last words on the cannabis, MDMA, psilocybin business, or anything that you'd like to impart to our listeners about your journey so far in this very interesting and fast evolving business?
Yeah, I mean, we're really at the ground level here. Those people have seen cannabis and psychedelics in the news, and there's been a number of companies that have gone public, raised money based on plans of conducting trials or developing something unique and proprietary. And there was a lot of speculative kind of messaging in the space, right? And I think people grew a bit tired because they weren't seeing the outcomes that were promised, whether it be from a return on investment or the development and approval of new drugs. And now we're at a time where the companies that are still participating in the space are starting to really come out with some interesting initiatives right now. And I think, we're going to see a lot of exciting developments. I think the regulatory support is growing at a rapid pace, and this is partially driven by the capital that governments are starting to allocate to understanding and the safety and efficacy of alternative treatment with cannabis and psychedelics. And whereas over the last 5 or 6 years, there was a lot of companies that were started and had trouble properly capitalizing themselves, and unfortunately had to reduce their research budgets. But we're really seeing those budgets start to increase, and we're seeing a ton of interesting projects happening globally. So we're really seeing things come down to business fundamentals, and some really interesting strategies start to come to fruition. And we hope to play our role, whether through BC Green and supplying the global medical markets and the domestic recreational market here in Canada with high quality, cannabis products that are reliable, standardized, and unique. And we hope, through Optimi that we can continue to develop unique products and to support and drive clinical research and also, provide relief to patients today in approved markets such as Australia. So, ground zero, we're excited to play the role that we are, continue to look out for advancements in the near future.
Sounds exciting times, Jacob. I really appreciate your time and sharing your insights on the industry. Again, I wish you the best of luck going forward. And I think given the changes that we may see in the next couple of years, I think we may need to, continue the conversation, a little bit later, a year from now, let's say, and see, how the landscape looks.
Absolutely, Norm. No, we're going to see a lot of change in even just a year. Both these markets are quite dynamic, and we're really excited where things are trending right now. So I look forward to that.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks a lot for your time, Jacob.
Yeah, thanks, Norm. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, sounds great.